listener production.
Hi, it's Helen Smith here with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Millions of Australians shop with Temu and Shein every year, fueling the ultra-low-cost marketplace. And now, Amazon wants in on the action.
It makes perfect business sense, given they are a very established brand here in Australia. I think they account for 10% of the online shopping here in Australian market, which is huge.
Amazon Haul has just launched in Australia, but it's raised questions over its ethical standards and practices and how they'll be regulated. That's coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Tara Cassidy. It's Thursday, the 21st of August.
Hey Helen, and to you listening, happy Thursday. We're nearly at the end of the week, hang in there. Now this morning we've learned that a former SAS soldier will be the first in Australia to ever face trial for a war crime. 43-year-old Oliver Schultz is facing one charge of murder for allegedly shooting an Afghan man named Dad Mohammed during a mission in 2012. Yesterday, in the New South Wales Supreme Court, Schultz was committed to stand trial for the crime after a hearing in April and May where ADF witnesses gave evidence and footage captured by a dog handler's helmet cam was played in court.
In the video, an SAS dog can be seen attacking the Afghan man, who was in his 20s, a father of two girls, a toddler and a newborn at the time, before the dog's called off and the soldier is heard preparing his weapon before asking, "You want me to drop this expletive?" 3 times, and firing 3 shots at the man as he laid in a wheat field. According to the Commonwealth Criminal Code, if a person is not a combatant or they're out of action due to an injury or damage and they're killed, it's considered a war crime. If found guilty, Schultz could face life in prison. He's expected to be arraigned in October. Now, just briefly, for those who might be wondering whether this is in fact the first time an Australian soldier is facing a war criminal trial, yes, it is, as this does differ entirely from the case of former decorated war veteran turned war criminal Ben Roberts-Smith.
Yeah, that's right. That case was a civil case, and that was different because it stemmed from 9 newspapers accusing him of war crimes like unlawful killings and of bullying and domestic violence. Now, Ben Roberts-Smith sued for defamation but lost, with the court finding on the balance of probabilities that the most serious allegations aimed at him were true and his case was dismissed. So yes, both accusations of war crimes, one civil defamation case, the other, Oliver Schultz's, a criminal murder trial.
Australia's deadly road toll is at a 15-year high, with pedestrian deaths up by almost 50% since 2021, with some experts saying e-scooters and e-bikes could be to blame. According to the nation's peak motoring body, in the year up to July 2025, over 1,300 people died on Australian roads, including 205 pedestrians. That's up 44 than the previous year. The Australian Automobile Association is calling on the federal government for more transparency over what could be causing the rise in deaths, saying our national road safety strategy is falling well short of its targets. The place with the biggest jump in pedestrian deaths is WA, 31, nearly double that of a year earlier. And then Queensland, which had 37 deaths, that's up by 14 fatalities too.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the Australian Pedestrian Association says that allowing e-mobility devices on footpaths like high-powered motorbikes and e-scooters could be playing a part, with 8 e-scooter deaths recorded in Queensland alone last year. Now, in response to that, earlier this year, the Queensland government did launch an inquiry into its current safety rules around e-scooters and e-bikes in comparison to other jurisdictions, with WA also expected to do the same and aiming to try and regulate their use. Now, overall, looking at the entire country's road toll, New South Wales was the deadliest state, followed by Queensland, Victoria and then WA. And in Tasmania, there was a 41.9% increase, which is a massive jump. And only South Australia and the Northern Territory saw improvements.
Monash IVF, the fertility giant at the centre of two separate IVF bungles, is under pressure to publicly release a review into the incidents to restore trust and faith in families across Australia. In April, a woman in Brisbane learnt she had given birth to another IVF patient's baby after their embryos had been mixed up as a result of human error. In a second separate incident in Melbourne in June, Monash apologised after a woman's embryo was incorrectly transferred to her instead of the embryo of her partner, as per their patient plan.
The mix-up saw the Monash IVF CEO resign and led to nationwide backlash from patients and advocates, calls for reform, and many urging anyone who's used the provider to undergo DNA testing, with Health Minister Mark Butler saying this at the time.
I know a lot of people are really worried now about confidence in the system. We need to deal with some of the gaps in regulation, some of the lack of transparency.
And this week, Mark Butler's called out the fertility giant for not releasing an internal independent review, which it carried out, saying it should be made public for transparency, while a peak shareholder group agreed, saying without it, investors and stakeholders couldn't be confident that the issues have actually been addressed.
Now, according to Monash IVF, the review concluded the first incident was caused by human error, while the second was various issues from human error at multiple points to having limited IT systems. According to the provider, it will be keeping the review private to protect the privacy of the affected patients, but it says it's implemented many of its recommendations.
The larger the house, the less people living in it. That's what new data has found, revealing a major housing mismatch across the country. In Australia, more than 60% of households are made up of just one or two people, according to Cotality, with its head of research, Eliza Owen, saying it shows a misalignment between who lives in our homes and the kinds of homes that are being built. Now, around 40% of households have a single person, aged 65 or over, living by themselves. Meanwhile, there are around 1.3 million families of just two people living in three-bedroom homes, and that's about 200,000 more than the number of 3 or 4 person families in the same size dwellings.
Now, while there's nothing wrong with living in a house that has more bedrooms than people, Owen says it highlights some inefficiencies in the way housing is being allocated, especially amid the current housing crisis in Australia that we're in. And there's been suggestions that the government could introduce some policies that makes it more expensive to have more room in a house than you need, or cheaper to live in a smaller house. And independent housing researcher Cameron Cusher agrees. He says there are many factors that lead Australians to buying a bigger home than they need, including high transaction costs like stamp duty, which new policies could help abolish.
Yeah, I also think there's just some way more basic reasons for things like that as well, like couples that might be planning to be parents one day, or even older parents wanting a spare room for when they're kids or a guest visit. And I don't think that people should be discouraged or charged more for something like that. I think that's pretty standard, and I think it would be a bit overboard in my eyes. And government, just build enough homes, period. I think that would be a better solution.
Yeah, I also think we've seen the rate of people having children and getting married actually go down. So if we have a couple that have, a 2-person income that don't want to have kids or aren't looking to do that, why can't they have a spare room as an office or a guest room or something like that? So yes, while the housing crisis 100% needs to be addressed and we need more houses, I'm not sure if this is the best way to get it done.
And a Year 1 teacher has gone viral for a hilarious yet important message that she shared with her students through song and dance. Have a listen.
These are my private parts, private parts, private parts. These are my private parts. No one should touch them. No one should squeeze them. And if you touch my private parts, private parts, private parts. And if you touch my private parts, I will tell my mother.
Gelda Waterboa, a primary school teacher in Namibia, Africa, became an overnight sensation after posting this video of her singing and dancing to this song in front of her class, and it's just gone off, Helen.
Yeah, the video got over 95 million views in just a week, and now that's over 100 million views, with people praising her for the teaching method, talking to kids about boundaries and delivering it in a way that sinks in with them and makes them more comfortable comfortable to talk about it. Now, while some critics thought the kids were too young to be learning about predators and unwanted touching, which I don't necessarily agree with, because we've seen consent be a big, big issue and a big point of education here in Australia. What do you think, Tara?
I honestly, after everything I've learned about this issue and seeing how many child abuse offences and alleged offenders are often on court lists every single day, and just seeing the issues happening in the childcare sector right now, it's obviously a very prominent issue. So I don't think it's ever too early to be talking about this with kids, but I just do think it's how it's delivered. And I think Gelda has hit the nail on the head with this one. Probably maybe more effective than a puppet in a van talking about stranger danger, which is what I got in school, Helen. But what do you guys think about this one? We'll chuck a question in our broadcast channel Behind the Briefing on Instagram, so you can let us know there, or send us a DM with a short voice note on what you think as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And that brings our headlines to a close for today. And Tara, you will be off for a little while as you're off to go and get married, which is very exciting.
Just 2 weeks, so I'll be back very shortly and you'll be in safe hands. Helen and Dan Mullins will be leading the headlines for the next few weeks, and Chris will be back very soon and I won't be far behind. But yes, I'll be back a wedded woman.
Very exciting stuff. But coming up next is my deep dive looking into Amazon's answer to Temu. Have a listen to that. Amazon has launched what some are calling their own version of Temu. The retail giant's new venture, Amazon Haul, is set to let Aussies shop for hundreds of thousands of items for less than $25 in a bid to compete with the ultra-low-cost marketplace. From mid-2023 to 2024, Temu reached around 3.8 million Australian shoppers and Shein reached about 2 million, with experts predicting the 2024 to 2025 period could be even greater. And Amazon is hoping to use their brand recognition as a point of difference, calling Haul a convenient and trusted alternative to the cheap Chinese-operated retailers. But it's prompted questions and concerns over safety and regulation within the ultra-low-cost marketplace and put the focus on how Australian regulatory bodies can create better ethical standards for customers and workers alike. Dr. Bo Pang is the Associate Director of the Consumer Innovation Research Group at Swinburne University. Dr. Pang, how would you describe Amazon Haul?
Oh, I think the Haul is Amazon's direct response to the rise of ultra-low-cost marketplaces like Temu and Shein.
And customers will have to download the app to use Haul. What are the benefits for Amazon by using a tactic like this?
I think it's really about customer retention, right? If you look at what has been done by Temu, by Shein, so they all have their own versions of apps. Most of the audiences have logged into the app, so there is a lot of functions, plays the psychological tricks on your mind, like raffles, you got a lot of vouchers, all these animations giving you the sense of feeling that there are a lot of deals, a lot of discounts that are time limited. So you can actually get a good bargain right now. So it's actually tricking your mind to place the order. And I think Amazon is into this game right now, trying to compete head to head with the other two platforms to really use these tactics to get more customers.
And how will Haul be different from the regular Amazon that we know today?
It's going to be very different. I think that's why it's such a brilliant move by Amazon. It makes perfect business sense, given they are a very established brand here in Australia. I think they count for 10% of the online shopping here in Australian market, which is huge. So instead of competing themselves with the other two ultra-low cost platforms directly, in certain degree will damage their own brand. They are actually having this spin-off, right, to actually have some sort of support from the main brand, but also competing in a totally different category.
How will Haul be different from Temu when it comes to the ultra low-cost marketplace?
Well, this is something we will have to wait and see, right? But to me personally, I'm very, very excited. I think it's a great move, especially if you're looking at the existing business models of Temu and Shein. This is literally a vicious cycle, right? So because they are super cheap, the manufacturers will have to cut corners to make sure the products are cheap enough. So there's still a margin. And then when the products are cheap, the quality are bad, and the customer will have lower expectations. And that research cycle can be reset, hopefully, by Amazon, just because they have their own established governance systems, the customer service infrastructure, and hopefully all these bad things can be transferable into the new whole platform. While they're competing with price, I hope what they're hoping for is actually competing for value, for money, instead of just price.
So if these products are costing less than regular Amazon products, is there going to be any trade-off for customers? Because generally when we pay less, the quality is less and so on.
Not necessarily about the quality. So for Amazon, I would say it's a whole package offering, right? So not only just the product, we'll talk about the service, we'll talk about the return, we'll talk about the support and the warranty you're getting as well. There will be a few trade-offs for sure when customers switch from the Amazon to Whole, which are, I think, longer shipping, because Amazon Prime is advertising for their 2-day shipping or next day shipping. Now probably have to wait a little bit longer to get your products. And the change on man return will be much more tightened on that front. And we'll have to see, of course, how much of the customer service we'll get and how much of the quality of the customer service we'll get as well. So there will be a lot of ways they will have to minimize the cost in order to make Whole sustainable. But, we all know you're getting what you pay for, right? So it's not only just the product. Hopefully the quality is not getting too bad, but there will be some other sacrifices you have to make.
And ultra-low-cost marketplace stores are increasingly under scrutiny when it comes to regulation. Is this a good look for Amazon, who have already been accused of exploiting workers for their regular storefront, if they're going to make products cost less? And are there going to be tighter regulations that they're going to have to follow?
There is a lot of discussions around the regulatory watch already. I think Temu had some incidents last year. It's all over the news, right? So some Temu sold jumper caught fire, and a little girl got burned really badly. That prompts them to join the voluntary online market product safety pledge. But I think it's not enough, to be honest, right? So it's called voluntary. It's actually, and Amazon was one of them too, along with some other bigger online stores. So they voluntarily pledged they are going to set up a much more stringent, strict product safety guidelines. But that's not enough. I agree with you. I think the regulatory frameworks need to be in place to better protect the customer here in Australia. And of course, there's a few things you mentioned absolutely right. We're talking about even the tax evasions. We're talking about exploiting the workers and not actually hiring enough local workers. And they're actually putting a lot of pressures with local businesses as well. All these claims, all these criticisms are valid. There are probably a lot of things needs to be done on that front. ACCC just released a report last month citing unsafe products sold in online markets. It's their top priorities for 2025 to 26. So I think that's definitely in the right direction when things are moving towards. And we'll see how much of the regulatory network and all these major players in this space can make some changes to make sure all these platforms can act responsibly.
And looking down the line at the production of products for Amazon Haul and similar places like Temu and Shein, how will Australia be able to regulate product safety for workers especially? And you mentioned there the ACCC has said that this is a priority. How does it plan to do that?
I don't see any action listed, to be honest. I think this is probably the start of the actions. They start to realize there needs to be done. There will be a lot of things to be done on that front, which again, that's the first step of solving a problem, is acknowledging there is a problem, right? So I think, like I said, it's a good thing, and hopefully it can serve as a foundation to make some aggressive changes on that front. If you ask me about what things can be done, I think the first one as customer is the awareness. Right? So if you're buying from all these platforms, there is always a risk that you're buying unsafe products, the batteries, all these plastics. So it's actually some level of risk involved in using the products. And because of the low quality of the product, which means that probably you have to buy more in the next 3 months. You have to repeat your buying just because of the durability is not there, right? So it's not hurting your safety, it's also hurting your wallet. And then all this broken stuff will end up in landfill is actually hurting our planet. So it's actually a triple damage caused by all these platforms. That's why there must be a lot of things to be done.
And if Australians do want to buy from Hall, because we are in a cost of living crisis and sometimes cheaper items are more attractive, how can they know if they're buying from a place that does meet ethical standards by our Australian regulators?
It's going to be really, really hard. I want to be very upfront on that. We always say in marketing, right? So the most important detail is the details they are not reporting. Okay, so every time you log into the website, there will be so much information about how good their product is. But all the things they didn't mention, right? How long it can be used, how safe they are, and are they going to meet all these ethical and responsible guidelines and even safety guidelines? I would say it's non-existent. And even there is some kind of claims, how can you verify that, right? So as ordinary consumers, I don't think that's our obligation to go through that. Right, so there will be things we can do. There will be online comments, there will be reviews, there will be customer groups. You join on Facebook, for example, so people can share information, can share knowledge. But it's really not about us consumers to do all this hard yards. It needs to be the regulators, it needs to be the government to make sure there is additional layers to protect our rights. Yes, I'm being very critical about this whole concept of ultra low cost platform, but I also think Amazon's opportunity to make things better, right? Just because they have their major brand to protect, so they don't want to mess up their spin-off that will damage their main brand. Hopefully, they can use their very sophisticated framework for governance, for customer services to actually compete for value for money instead of just a very, very plain old price war. That in that sense, everyone will benefit.
Dr. Bo Pang, thank you so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Oh, thanks for having me.
That was Dr. Pang from Swinburne University speaking with me there. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing. Before you go, though, we'd love it if you could rate and review The Briefing wherever you're listening from. It's a really easy way you can support everything we do here on the show. And you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Helen Smith. Catch you next time.